Once again, good afternoon and welcome to the Committee on Governmental Operations. At this time, if you can please place phones on vibrate or silent mode. Thank you, Chair. We are ready to begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the City Council's Governmental Operations Committee hearing on the fiscal 2024 preliminary budget. My name is Sandra Ong. I'm the chair of the committee. At today's hearing, we'll hear testimony from the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, the Law Department, the Board of Elections, and the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings regarding the fiscal 2024 preliminary plan. The agencies testifying today carry out many of the most important functions that keep our city running, including managing the city's vehicle fleet, ensuring that the citywide heat, light, and power bills are paid on time, advising and defending us from lawsuits, and conducting elections, collecting administrative fines, and much more. Our responsibility as members of this committee is to work with these agencies to ensure that they deliver to the city. We look forward to hearing more details about the agency's budget and whether funding is being used efficiently. I would like to make sure that we thank the committee staff for their hard work in preparing for this hearing. Principal Financial Analyst Julia Haramis and Florentine Cabor, Financial Analyst Ross Goldstein, Financial Unit Head Aliyah Ali, Senior Legislative Counsel Christopher Murray, who's out on paternity leave, Legislative Policy Analyst Erica Cohen, my Chief of Staff Alexander Hart, and my Communications Director Shane Miller. And now I'd like to welcome Dawn Pinnock, the Commissioner of the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, to testify before this committee. Thank you for coming, Commissioner. DCAS fiscal 2024 preliminary budget totals $1.4 billion, including nearly $206 million in personal services to support 2,323 full-time positions. The budget also includes $1.2 billion in other than personnel services. DCAS budget is divided into 10 program areas, and the bulk of the agency's overall budget, or 65%, is allocated to the energy conservation program areas. In the preliminary plan, DCAS fiscal 2024 preliminary budget is $42.2 million, less than its fiscal 2023 adopted budget. This slight decrease of 3% is mainly driven by reduced funding across DCAS program budgets. Additionally, the agency anticipates losing 105 headcount and is running with 107 vacant positions. At today's hearing, we will deep dive into DCAS budget to ensure that New Yorkers and city agencies receive the service they deserve. And now I would like to please ask the committee counsel to administer the oath and swear in the testifying representatives.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to the council member questions?
I do.
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Ong and members of the Committee on Governmental Operations. My name is Dawn Pinnock, and I proudly serve as the Commissioner of the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, more commonly known as DCAS. At DCAS, our mission is to make city government work for all New Yorkers. I'm joined today by my Chief Financial Officer, Shannon Middleton, and members of my leadership team. As a team, we approach our work with a commitment to our three core values: equity, effectiveness, and sustainability. I'm pleased to be here to discuss the proposed DCAS budget for fiscal year 2024. I want to start by providing a few updates about DCAS's work since our agency testified before this committee last year. The climate crisis is real, and it is urgent. And that is why DCAS is taking bold and decisive action to reduce emissions from government operations. In fiscal year 22, DCAS completed 2,000 energy efficiency measures in city buildings and infrastructure, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 24,600 metric tons, the equivalent of removing 5,300 cars from our streets. Thus far in fiscal year 23, we have successfully installed resilient solar roofing at 6 fire department firehouses to generate emissions-free energy. We made historic investments in electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. During fiscal year 22, we replaced nearly 1,300 fossil fuel powered vehicles with electric models, a key step as we transition the entire fleet to electric. We also led a successful effort to reduce the size of the city's vehicle fleet by over 850 vehicles. This initiative will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 2,000 metric tons per year and save taxpayers $13.7 million per year. In addition to our climate actions, we are helping city government get stuff done, helping every agency deliver on their mission, and creating opportunities for all New Yorkers. During fiscal year 22 and year to date, we've made strides to innovate and improve the civil service process. We created and administered the city's first bridge exam. This exam covers 10 different civil service titles. By only paying one fee and taking one exam, New Yorkers will be eligible for jobs under 10 different civil service titles. We also hosted and participated in nearly 200 events to spread awareness about working for the City of New York, reaching over 12,000 participants. We also administered 153 civil service exams to over 79,000 job seekers and released mobile technology that now allows job seekers to apply for civil service exams using their cell phones. Through this work, we are opening pathways to great careers in government. In addition to strengthening the city's workforce, DCAS is responsible for purchasing, storing, and managing the inventory of over $1 billion in supplies and equipment procured for city agencies each year. The bulk purchasing we do helps lower prices that save money and allows for a centralized distribution process. To improve the procurement process, during fiscal year 2022, we deployed our new warehouse management system and integrated that system with the city's procurement system known as Passport. This will enhance the use of our inventory and do additional data analysis to inform management and reporting. As DCAS Commissioner, one of my many goals is to build a better DCAS, one that is customer-focused, nimble, modern, and effective. While much has been achieved during the first year of the Adams administration, important work lies ahead. As we look forward, we're doubling down on cultivating a city government that delivers equity, access, and fortifies communities. Over the past 3 years, employers around the world have been plagued with unprecedented challenges as a direct result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, the City of New York is no exception. Despite the harsh realities that have upended the workforce as we know it, we are proud that our civil servants have continued to provide critical services and ensure that New Yorkers have access to adequate resources, opportunities, and information. In the coming months, we are ramping up on a recruitment effort that involves the launch of a marketing campaign aimed at encouraging people to join the city's workforce and hosting monthly hiring events across the city. These events are targeted to all New Yorkers with an emphasis on providing equity and access for underserved populations who might not have considered chartering a career path in city government. In addition to the work we are doing to improve and grow our workforce, we have also committed to 4 core strategic priorities which align with Mayor Adams' objectives. Those 4 priorities include jobs. As we manage the city's primary pathways to employment, it is our main objective to position New York City government as a competitive employer and reduce and standardize current hiring cycle times. And we're also looking to increase recruitment and retention of diverse talent pools. Number 2, growing our electric vehicle network. We will continue to expand citywide electric vehicle charging infrastructure with an emphasis on increasing accessibility in environmental justice communities. 3, increasing opportunities for MWBEs. We will support MWBEs by increasing their contract spend through direct vendor engagement, training, and improved procurement methods. We are also increasing our MWBE outreach by creating bi-monthly in-house networking opportunities between vendors in certain purchasing categories. And number 4, making our city more livable. We will improve communities and make our city more livable and attractive by increasing property utilization for city-owned and leased spaces. As we strive to achieve these goals, it's important to understand how DCAS's budget plays a role in determining what is possible. The vast majority of DCAS's budget is allocated to cover expenditures on behalf of other city agencies. In fact, 61% of our annual budget supports programs at our sister agencies. 36% supports citywide services that agencies utilize or benefit from, and the remaining 2% supports our internal needs. As the city's service provider, our $1.6 billion operating budget must support $916 million in projected energy expenses, including heat, light, and power at agencies and properties across the city, $152 million to cover costs associated with multi-tenanted lease sites, as we're responsible for identifying space for city agencies and other public entities when city-owned space is not available or feasible. DCAS has also been leading efforts on multiple initiatives aimed at reducing emissions from government operations. electrification of the citywide fleet, and maintaining city buildings by addressing life and safety repairs in the public sites we manage. In the current year, our budget includes $19.5 million for facade projects, $7.7 million to support emergency roof and other interior repairs, $32 million to support the city's effort to transition to an all-electric fleet, and $110 million to achieve the One City climate goals as outlined in Executive Order 89 and Local Law 97. In addition to the aforementioned programs, every year DCAS generates revenue on behalf of the city. In fiscal year 23 and 24, we anticipate generating $60.9 million and $66.2 million respectively. This revenue is primarily due to three areas: the rental of city-owned properties, the sale of surplus vehicles, and other city-owned equipment, and from applicant filing fees for civil service exams. For our capital plan, the preliminary budget reflects an updated 5-year plan of $4.1 billion from fiscal year 23 through fiscal years 27 for projects managed by DCAS. This plan includes maintenance and enhancements to DCAS facilities, renovation of leased spaces, and continuing our energy conservation and fleet electrification work. The preliminary budget for fiscal year 24 is $856 million. I want to take the opportunity to thank the Council for its ongoing partnership and for providing me with the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to working with each of you to advance the mission of DCAS and support the critical work we do citywide to keep our city thriving. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. And we are here joined by Councilmember Shulman and Ressler. I just have a couple of questions. Regarding the MWBE, DCAS fiscal 2024 contract budget totals $58 million to cover 134 contracts in the same fiscal year. How much of DCAS contract budget was allocated to the minority and women, the MWBE in fiscal 2023?
I'll turn that question over to our Chief Contracting Officer, Roman Goffman.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. DCAS, our budget aren't specifically allocated to MWBEs. Rather, we ensure that every possible dollar that can be awarded based on our ability to procure through the rules. Any instance that we can go directly to MWBEs for contracts under $1 million, unbundling our other contracts to create that value or increase our goals on prime contracts, we take every opportunity to increase MWBE utilization.
Okay, but in 2023, is there a number for that?
So currently for 2023, we've contracted around $19.6 million with MWBEs, and the total contracts allocated currently is $74 million.
So back to what you were saying originally, is there any contracting issues, the MWBEs, that you could, through the contracting process that you have noticed that could be done better?
So for DCAS, generally, a lot of our contracts are based on citywide needs, as our citywide procurement team procures for all agencies to utilize a contract. Back in January, when the MWB discretionary method went up to $1 million, we delegated our charter authority back to the agencies to allow them to procure goods up to $1 million, where it used to be $100,000. So DCAS, when it does its own procurement, it's typically where it goes over that $1 million threshold where we can't utilize the MWB discretionary method, and then we do it as competitive sealed bids, with the bid being the lowest bid being the awarded vendor who is responsible. There are instances that we use other criteria to increase MWBE utilization. So with bids, we do best values. We've had experience where we did our electric fleet trucks, the Ford Mustangs. We did it as a best value, which the bids came in from an MWBE vendor and a non-MWBE vendor at the same price, where we awarded the MWBE vendor based on the best value method. So we take every opportunity we have to award MWBEs, but typically we're doing large-scale procurements where we can't utilize these discretionary methods or micro-purchase methods, and it comes in as the lowest, most responsible bidder.
And if I can just add, I know you specifically mentioned about challenges. So some of the challenges that we've noticed while working with MWBEs is that in some cases, individuals or vendors don't know what it means to do business with the city. And so one of the things that the team has done, they put together those networking sessions that we mentioned where they would understand some of the reporting requirements and working with the city, the invoicing requirements. We also partnered with MOX, Mayor's Office of Contract Services, to host information sessions to really train vendors on how to use the Passport system, since all invoicing and contracting is done through that system. But also, when we have larger contracts, we've taken an active role, a proactive role in debundling those contracts, meaning that we're just not sending out that RFP for a large vendor to come in. We take a look at the current market, and we conduct an analysis to see if there's actually capacity with registered MWBEs. And as a result of that analysis, we debundle that contract and make certain awards more appropriate for a smaller business to take on so they can gain that experience in working with the city.
Thank you. What are the normal MWBE contracts with DCAS?
So we procure everything from construction, building maintenances. Building maintenance is, our facilities management group is one of our higher volumes in contracting. We've been working on energy management also to try to get MWBEs in there. We're working currently on a security guard contract where we're cutting out and creating a MWBE only pre-qualified list where only MWBEs will be solicited to win these security guard contracts under $1 million. So we do almost every type of procurement method outside of human services. So it's construction, building maintenance, energy sector, training. We have MWB availability, and we have contracted with MWBs in all these sectors.
Thank you. Now I want to move a couple of questions about the civil service exam. So according to the PMMR, during the first 4 months of fiscal 2023, the number of civil service exams open for filing was 13% lower than the same period in fiscal 2022, and DCAS attribute this a decrease of the types of exam offered. And for one, I do have to ask about the job opportunity specialist exam in February. I believe this exam was canceled.
So the exam was postponed, and I'll start off, and I have my deputy commissioner here, Barbara Zannenberg, to fill in any details. So that particular exam, along with eligibility specialists, they were postponed, and that was done in consultation with the agency that hires within that title. The reason is because we wanted to give the opportunity for that agency to hire very quickly into those roles, and then we would have an opportunity then to create that exam after people have already received requisite training and started the work. So they've not been canceled. They will appear on the schedule. We just wanted to give some bandwidth and some time to the agency to actually recruit and hire into those roles to address immediate needs. In terms of the decrease that you see in the PMMR, our response was tied to the hiring needs of New York City. So when we put together our exams calendar every year, we canvass agencies to figure out what their hiring need is. So they could have 100 vacancies and job opportunity specialists. They could say, I need 5 probation officers. And so our list generally reflects the demand of our clients, and that would be our city agencies. At that time, there had been hiring that had slowed. So the need for those particular exams wasn't necessary because we had other lists readily available for agencies to use for hiring.
So just to be clear, the reason is not because DCAS lack resources to add additional applications.
So the resource issue is real, but the fact that we were able to delay certain exams, it actually allowed us to shift resources. So over this period, we also had to conduct really large-scale exams for our uniform partners, so specifically for sergeant and lieutenant. Sergeant alone, I think, has 10,000 test takers, and so we had to rent an external space in order to administer that exam over 1 to 2 days, and so it allowed us to shift existing resources to address those other exams.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I have just a last question about the renewable energy deal. So last year, DCAS played a role in securing a deal, the New York State Energy and Research Development, to power city government operations using 100% renewable energy by 2025. So what does that really mean when it says operation will be powered by 100% renewable energy by 2025?
I'm going to forward that question to Brian Chang, our Assistant Commissioner for Supply.
Yes, and thank you for that question. So what we mean by 100% renewable energy supply is that when these two transformative transmission lines are fully up and constructed and providing clean energy directly to the city of New York, it will essentially allow us to power 100% of city operations within our current purview through renewable energy sources directly.
Well, I mean, 2025 is around the corner. So what is the status update of this agreement? It's been 1 year.
Of course, and I'm happy to announce our progress on these two lines that we've achieved since the committee met last year. For, excuse me, for one of the lines, the Champlain Hudson Power Express, the construction broke ground in November of last year. The other second line, Clean Path New York, is projected to break ground next year, and in both cases, both lines are projected to have operations by fiscal year 26.
Okay, so a little bit behind.
Well, I think the figure I believe you noted earlier was calendar year 2025. I was just noting that the full projected timeline for both projects are expected to come through the fiscal year. So I think we're still close, but not.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. I believe Councilmember Ressler has a few questions.
Thank you so much, Chair Ung. I didn't realize that you were already ready for me. It is good to see you, Commissioner.
Same here.
Truly. I am one of your big fans, and you have a great team at DCAS. Shauna, especially, it's good to see you and everybody here, many of whom I've had the privilege of working with over the years. I think that Mayor Adams made the absolute best choice in his DCAS commissioner. So I'm
Thank you.
Happy to get a chance to engage a little bit today. I've been a bit of a broken record at every other oversight hearing that we've been having during the preliminary budget process, where I've been fixated on the dramatic decline that we've experienced in the city workforce, which is now under 300,000 people for the first time since, I believe, 2015, the beginning of the de Blasio administration. We haven't seen such a steep decline in the workforce since the recession in the early 90s. It is very concerning, and we see the real impacts it's having on the processing of SNAP and cash assistance benefits, the installation of bike and bus lanes, the planting of trees across the board. When you look at the PMMR, this fiscal year, we are seeing agencies fail to achieve their objectives because they don't have the staff. And so, just first off, I know that the hiring halls, I think, were your innovation. Appreciate the leadership that DCAS has demonstrated there in partnership with DC 37. And I'm pleased to see those taking off. When do we think we'll be able to fill the 25,000 vacancies that kind of permeate city government? When do we expect to fill them by, from your vantage point? Is this something that we can look to? Do we have a timeline for how we're going to properly and fully staff up city government?
So we absolutely have a plan, and apologies in advance because our plan is pretty comprehensive, but I will try to be brief in the interest of time. But I do want to go back just to provide a bit of context. Certainly the city is experiencing a staffing shortage, as folks are similarly nationwide. And as it's taken time for us to get here, part of our approach is really taking the time in order to making sure that we are fortifying the city's workforce, but also building a pipeline. Because if we're just, being short-sighted and hiring into these roles, and we're not thinking about what it takes to recruit people, where to recruit them, and thinking about what to retain them, we're actually going to be in a very similar position very soon. So in terms of a specific timeline to say when we think we'd fill all 23,000 vacancies, I don't have that for you today. However, I can say that we are on what we're calling a 4-month sprint to see how much of a dent we can make in our vacancies between now and the end of this fiscal year. So that sprint involves quite a few things. The hiring halls, certainly that will continue. We will not be hosting just one event per month. In April, we will be hosting 4 borough-based events. Part of that is also targeting those titles where we have the greatest number of vacancies and those that place the greatest amount of risk to city operation and to services to New Yorkers. So for instance, we have a hiring hall this Saturday in Queens at Borough Hall. And we are focusing primarily on social services titles. So when we're thinking about the risks presented to DSS, we're covering the caseworker, the case manager, their job opportunity specialist, the eligibility specialist, to give them an opportunity to welcome job seekers and to conduct interviews on site and hire on site. And I'm sure you know this, we generally take quite a bit of time before making a job offer. And we're creating a space where people can do that day of an interview. And so we're doing those for a month between now and the end of the fiscal year. We certainly think we'll make a dent. On a parallel track, we are also meeting with folks who have been identified as recruitment czars in their agencies. So essentially, that is the person who works within the agency to identify a hiring goal. Because from our perspective, we can have all these events and you can have an agency-specific event, but if you don't have a goal in mind, then you're just, operating aimlessly, frankly. So before every event, an agency has to submit a goal, and at the end of the event, we want to know what the disposition was, namely how many offers you made, how many interviews you've conducted, et cetera. And I just have one more thing, specifically around retention.
Yeah.
So we've also convened working groups with agencies to look at our pre-hire process, because I know that there are a host of concerns that people have about how long it takes for them to get a job with the City of New York, but also looking at the onboarding process, so we can try to have a standardized experience regardless of the agency someone is hired into. So we are really emphasizing to all agencies that we are one employer, and so the experience that somebody would have when they work at DCAS should be the same experience they have when they go to the Department of Health. And I'm also happy to share with you other aspects of the sprint as well.
I appreciate all of that. It's good to hear and it's helpful. And I respect and know the depth of expertise that you have around human capital issues and human resources issues. But I do just want to say, my critique here is primarily of the mayor and OMB. When you look at the discrepancies of a 6% NYPD vacancy rate versus the nearly 20% DSS vacancy rate, or the low vacancy rates at the non-mayoral agencies versus the 18% DOB vacancy rate, in addition to the 11% of positions that have already been eliminated, there are serious discrepancies across agencies that, to me, are an indication of deliberate policies by the mayor and OMB to achieve savings on as a result of preventing hiring from happening. And so I just want to highlight, if I can, Chair Ung, I know we've got a long afternoon, very, very briefly, some of the things that I'm looking at, though, that are more in DCAS's control that I would love to see prioritized. Bridge exams, we saw a 13% reduction in exams year over year, as the chair noted. If we can expand bridge exams that allow more applicants to take one test for up to 10 titles, it could really help. And secondly, according to my notes, we're looking at 222 days as the average amount of time it's taking DCAS to certify exam results. So that is too long, and it is not helpful. And we've got to do more, that when people are applying for exams, it's bridge exams so they can apply for multiple titles, and we're getting those results certified much faster so that we can get the hiring process moving. Could you comment on both of those, and are those part of your priorities as we move forward as well?
They absolutely are. Expansion of the bridge exam, given the fact that we were able to test close to 4,000 test takers in one shot, covering 10 titles, is certainly what we'd like to do. We're actually looking at grouping job categories. So as opposed to having a test that's by title, if you're in an analyst series, we have an analyst exam, which will cover a slew of titles. So happy to share with you as we continue along that process. Secondly, around the 222 days, you're absolutely right. While it is below the target that's outlined in the MMR, what we are going to be doing is flipping more of our exams to an E&E format, which is, a valid test-taking type across municipalities, but it's also far quicker. And so definitely happy to share with you our progress, and I'm happy to see there's alignment.
I appreciate it. I'm pleased that you're driving this work. The one thing that I would ask is that there be more information sharing with the council. If it would be possible for DCAS to share monthly reports as we do this hiring frenzy through the end of the fiscal year to try to get as many people into positions as possible so we could help support your progress. Any ways we can be helpful, we want to be. Downtown Brooklyn would be a great place for a hiring hall event. We'd love to have
We're
you.
coming.
We're ready for you.
We're coming.
I will volunteer my good friend Antonio. We'd love to have you at Borough Hall. We want to make you. We want to
We're
host you.
absolutely going to Borough Hall, so thank you for that.
I'll call him after this. But seriously, we want to help. So I know I'm going to get in trouble with my chair if I keep talking. I'm shutting up, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And DCA is actually having an event in my district with high school students. I think it's great. Get them involved in the pipeline young. Thank you for today, and thank you for your patience. I know you guys were waiting for a bit, so I appreciate all of you coming today.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
see?
Thank you so much, and we appreciate having the opportunity to testify before you today.
And thank you for always, keeping me up to date and, having meetings with you, with our office about, what is this, going on with DCAS. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Have a good day. Now I would like to welcome Corporate Counsel Sylvia Hines-Reddix, the head of the Law Department, to testify before this committee. Thank you for testifying before today's hearing. The Law Department's fiscal 2024 prelim budget totals 220.9 million, including 145.2 million in personnel services funding to support the 15-23 budget full-time positions. Today, we look forward to discussing the Law Department's operations, including its hiring plans, reviewing its fiscal 2023 prelim mayor's management report, among other important topics. With that, I would like to please ask the committee counsel to administer the oath and swear in the testifying representatives.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? You may proceed.
Distinguished members of the Government Operations Committee, it is a pleasure to come before you to discuss the Law Department's fiscal year 2024 preliminary budget. I'm joined by First Assistant Corporation Counsel Muriel Good-Trufant, Managing Attorney Eric Eichenholz, and Chief of Administration Jenny Nagel. The Law Department represents the city, the mayor, the city council, other elected officials, and the city's agencies in all affirmative and defensive civil litigation. As a prosecuting agency, the department brings proceedings in family court alleging violations of criminal laws and represent the people of the state of New York in proceedings filed in criminal court to enforce the city's administrative code. Law department attorneys draft and review local and state legislation, real estate leases, procurement contracts, and financial instruments for the sale of municipal bonds. The department also provides legal counsel to city officials on a wide range of issues, such as civil rights, education, intellectual property, land use, and environmental policy. The department's work embraces all city entities and operations. Our impact is tremendous. The department currently has on board approximately 730 assistant corporation counsels and 635 legal support professionals. We are proud to be a diversity, equity, and inclusion leader in the legal profession, with approximately 30% of our lawyers ethnically diverse and 59% women. The law department plays an important role in enhancing the city's fiscal strength and advocating for the public good. Notably, our affirmative litigation division has already recovered some $37 million for the city and city entities this fiscal year, and we anticipate recovering approximately $6 million more by the end of the fiscal year. This includes monetary recoveries for unpaid cigarette taxes, property damages, social services overpayments, judgment collection activities, breach of contract, trademark infringement, design and construction litigation, among other things. In addition to these recoveries, we continue to reach large settlements from the ongoing litigation against the manufacturers and distributors of opioids. As you may be aware, the city, along with other states, including New York and other counties and cities throughout the U.S., brought claims against manufacturers and distributors and marketers of prescription opioid products. The city has received more than $10 million from settlements from these lawsuits since January of this year alone. As we reach settlement with other manufacturers, the amount received by the city will continue to grow. For example, this past January, the city, in connection with the state and other localities in New York, settled with another large opioid manufacturers, and that will result in the city receiving a total of $80 million over the duration of the settlement. In addition to these financial recoveries, our affirmative litigation division continues to pursue civil enforcement actions to protect city residents, including our successful litigation for injunctive relief, preventing ghost gun manufacturers from selling those dangerous guns into New York City. We also anticipate saving a significant amount of payouts from the Judgment and Claims Fund through our continuing activity to compel insurance companies to defend and indemnify the city. In these cases, our tort affirmative litigation divisions are enforcing coverage for lawsuits arising out of the work performed by private contractors and permittees. Every case that insurance companies step up to defend is a case that does not have to be defended by city attorneys, thus saving enormous legal resources. Settlements and judgments paid by insurers in cases falling within the policy coverage also saved the city substantial sums since the start of the project in 1990. We have saved the city almost $500 million, $2.5 billion. Another example of law department efforts that result in cost savings is the work of our TARCS Division Risk Management Unit that works with all city agencies to mitigate or eliminate risk to city residents, both short-term and identifying dangerous conditions that can be remediated quickly and long-term by identifying agency operations or practices that are often the subject of litigation to discuss possible changes. The Risk Management Unit meets regularly with city agencies to discuss the matters that are frequently the subject of litigation, to strategize about possible changes to mitigate risk. A further example is our Commercial and Real Estate Litigation Division, which defends the city in a wide range of contractual disputes. These disputes include 3 categories of agreements: contracts with private companies to build and repair the city's infrastructure, leases of important public properties, and contracts for all types of goods and services. These claims are largely based upon negotiated terms of pre-existing agreements and typically involve significant exposure to the city. In fiscal 22, the division saved the city more than $32 million by resolving $138 million in claims for just under $106 million, and is on pace to exceed that amount this fiscal year. Similarly, our tax assessments protected almost $62 million in property tax receipts in the fiscal year of 22, and more than $37 million during the first year of 23. The Law Department continues this excellent work at a time of great challenge. As we continue to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen a dramatic increase in our new filings. These new filings are part of an increased workload caused by a growing return to in-person court appearances and trials, and a substantial decrease in resources at our disposal. As you are likely familiar, our office works side by side with council attorneys, crafting local laws and then defending those laws if and when they are challenged. To name just a few, over the last year, we have collaborated in our defense of local laws, providing relief and protection to hotel employees, capping delivery app service fees, and laws prohibiting discrimination based on sexual and reproductive health decisions. This work was in addition to our effort to defend the city and its employees in litigation in more than 62,000 cases. During the pandemic, we have experienced an increase in pending cases, particularly in our largest division, tort. In tort, there are now more than 28,000 cases, 2,000 more than a year ago, and 4,000 more than 2 years ago. Included in this number are COVID-19 related cases, newly filed Child Victim Act cases, as well as long-standing cases for which trial dates in hundreds of cases in state court have been delayed by the pandemic, and for which the court system is now working to move forward. Pre-pandemic, we were able, with the assistance of the City Council, to add resources to the tort division, which enable us to improve case outcomes throughout increasing early settlements, engaging in better case preparation, and enhancing our state court trial practice. We have experienced a total erosion of those resources these past 2 years, and will need to focus on existing resources on handling the increased caseload. We continue to pursue innovative strategies to manage the workload across all our divisions in the face of the increased workload and post-pandemic challenges, but fear that the unprecedented level of attrition of ACCs and support professionals may outpace our mitigation efforts. All the work of the Family Court Division is geared towards strengthening families and communities. Its mission is twofold: through juvenile justice and interstate child support. We are the presentment agencies in all juvenile justice and adolescent offender cases referred to the city's family courts. Under the rehabilitative mandate of the Family Court Act, the Family Courts Division must work to achieve outcomes that serve the needs of each individual youth brought before the court, while at the same time protecting the interest of crime victims and ensuring the safety of the community at large. However, these matters require resources similar to those prosecutorial agencies, such as our district attorneys. Our family court attorneys work in approximately 30 locations, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including night, weekend, and holidays. The amount of serious matters handled by this division continues to rise. New York City continues to experience a significant increase in violence around firearm cases. The number of firearm cases handled by that division is at its all-time high, and it has increased exponentially over the past 3 years. Where referral of 0 or 1 homicide was the norm of the division in prior 5 years, in 2022, 8 homicides were referred and investigated to our staff. In 2017, the division handled 39 firearm cases citywide. In 2022, 384 firearm cases were referred and investigated by our family court division. Despite the increased complexities of cases and challenges regarding evolving technology and attrition, with the exception of the first year of the pandemic in 2020, this division has maintained a conviction rate of over 70%. The goal for youth and juvenile justice is to identify strengths as well as resources and opportunities to foster success in the community. To do so, our staff members are dedicated to outreach across the 5 boroughs, attending events in schools and in communities in order for us to meet and support all those who may need our assistance. In juvenile justice proceeding, the law requires a determination that balances the need of the youth and the community's safety. The vast majority of our cases in the division result in community-based outcomes, including diversion and restorative justice. Despite the continued difficulties presented by the pandemic, the number of diversions have continued to grow. Throughout all matters, we look forward to matching youth, families, and impacted community members with appropriate services and opportunities geared toward preventing system involvement and providing rehabilitation, securing restorative services, and promoting enhanced outcomes for youth, families, and communities in New York City. Our staff is committed to a holistic approach to these issues. My testimony today provides a limited survey for you of the very broad and varied legal work performed by the Law Department. By keeping the interests of all New Yorkers at the center of our work, we can do what is right and reinforce trust in government. And that is our core commitment. I thank you for your support of the Law Department, and I look forward to our continued collaboration, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and again, apologies for the very late start. Just a few questions. The prelim budget adds $1 million in the city funds in just fiscal 2023 for consultant hired in relation to a litigation between the city and Hurricane Sandy contractor. What was this funding used for?
I would refer this question to Jen Nagel, our Chief of Administration.
Hi there. This is a case associated with the city's Build It Back program, and there was a large amount of backup that had to be reviewed in a very short discovery time. So the purpose of this contractor was to assist with the review of this documentation. The discovery period has ended. It ended in January, so that's why it's just a 1 year.
Okay, perfect. You answered that question. About the positions and pay levels, because I know like all across New York City, and especially in the law department, there's a need to hire more attorneys. So what are the priority positions that the law department is most focused on hiring right now?
Well, in the law department, we actually are focus on getting into our head count. You realize that in the documentation that we've given to you that our torts department took a big hit. We have 28,000 outstanding cases in torts. Obviously, that is a focus of ours. Also, in our family court division, that's also a significant focus for us. But we want to be able to maintain the headcount across the board in the department, and we're working towards that.
And has the law department take a look at the valuation of current salary levels and the potential increases for these positions to improve hiring and retention?
Yeah, we we are quite aware of the fact that we have not remained competitive.
Okay.
We've seen attrition. One of the factors is that our salaries are not competitive, and we have been discussing this with OMB, and we've been taking a look at our salary structure. There are people who are leaving us who are going to areas that historically we were the creme de la creme, and so those things are significant to us.
So briefly, what is right now the salary structure? What would be a attorney coming in? I assume it's based on years of experience.
Well, yes, and then there is a starting salary, and we can provide you with that. That there's a starting salary and the gradations that we have after a year after an attorney passes the bar. But our starting salary right now is $73,500.
I see. Thank you. I'm also an attorney myself in my past life, and I do know how important it is. Someone who thinks it's important to work for New York City, but it needs to be something that, as you just said, it should be comparable. Not as comparable to private, I understand that, but comparable enough where they do want to work in the law department, which I actually know many friends who have many great starts from the law department.
Right, and we actually train our attorneys well. They get a significant amount of training from us, and so we feel it when they move on to.
They do. They move on to really great private legal practices actually.
Yeah.
And just a question about the payouts for judgment and claims. So according to the PMMR, the payouts made for judgment and claims from fiscal 2022 was $794.7 million, which is considerably higher than the $623.2 million in fiscal 2020 and the $576 million in fiscal 2021. Any reasons why there was an increase, and does it relate to any particular large payout?
Who has that? You or Muriel will answer that.
Yes, thank you. There are certain large payouts that occurred in fiscal year 22. Some of them were related to reverse conviction cases. And so just a few of those large settlements caused the amount of judgment and claims to increase significantly.
Okay, thank you. What is the budget for payout for fiscal 2023?
The budget for judgment and claims is a question for the Office of Management and Budget.
Oh, okay. And lastly, what steps has the law department taken to reduce the judgment and claims expenditure?
We look to settle cases early where we can. We also look to investigate as thoroughly as we can, because by being prepared litigants, we are able to limit our liability.
Okay, just one last question. Would it be helpful to have more attorneys in the law department?
Well, it's always helpful to have more attorneys in the law department. Absolutely. There's a lot of work there to do. We've been also having these discussions with OMB about having more attorneys and replacing full-time positions, and that's been an ongoing discussion that we're having.
Thank you. I believe now all the council members here have a few questions, so I'm going to first start with Councilmember Shulman.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming today. I have not had interaction with the law department, but directly, at least. I used to work at Health and Hospitals, so I'm going to talk to you, particularly Woodhull Hospital. So I'm going to talk to you about settlements. How have the reduced staffing levels at the department impacted the cost of settlements? And I'm also going to ask, well, anyway, answer that first, and then I'll go into the rest of it.
You know, settlements, there are a lot of different pieces to settlements. Of course, fewer people to work will impact in any area. However, the law department, we've been quite resilient, and we have made sure that we have done whatever triage we've had to in order to ensure that we protect the city's interests, and that, you know, we fortunately have dedicated people at the law department who are really committed to the work that they do. That has caused us to have to do more with less, but we have been able to ensure that we have been protecting the interests of the city.
Thank you. Have settlements increased or decreased over the last year?
Well, they have been an increase in settlements for several reasons. One of them is that the fact that we've just come out of COVID. There were those clear cases that were quiet that are now not so, because the court has revamped and is moving more quickly with some of these things. So those are a lot of factors that have increased what we've had here with our.
So many years ago, there was a philosophy, particularly in terms of malpractice cases, that the law department would fight everything. And then that changed over the years to, let's see if we could settle. So what I'm going to ask you is, do you know how much money last year was paid out in settlements from H&H?
In the area of medical malpractice, H&H handles its own cases, not the law department.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, and so that money doesn't come into the general fund?
Not
It is a part of judgment and claims, but it's not a contribution that comes from the law department's work.
Okay, but city funds are paid for those settlements?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Is the law department pushing for the reinstatement of any of the vacancy reductions in terms of staffing and settlements?
Yes, we are. And as recently as last week, we were successful in having a new unit we had a discussion with OMB, and we were able to get a new ethics division, a division that will protect our ethical interests within not only just the law department, but all the city agencies. And so we continue to evaluate. We've been looking at the build out of our risk department, and that's an ongoing discussion, and we hope to be able to hear about that very shortly. But yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have to ask.
Thank you. Councilman Ressler?
Thank you, Chair Ung, and it is good to see you, Judge, and
you.
all of the fine folks from the Law Department. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate that both my colleagues have emphasized or wanted to talk about settlements today. I'm particularly concerned about PD settlements, and I think we saw the number this year go up to $121 million. And you know, the sort of recent article in New York Mag about the Ashanti case, and you know, the mentality of the law department to fight tooth and nail again in defense of police abuse, alleged police abuse and misconduct. And I found it really troubling, and am concerned about the approach of the law department over many years. You've only been there for a relatively short time, but wanted to to get an understanding why we're seeing such a major increase in police settlements, and if there's a shift in strategy or approach from the law department that could have a beneficial effect on improving NYPD's approaches toward community relations.
Well, thank you for the question, Council Member. I disagree with you on the characterization of that article, right? Because the law department's role is to ensure that it protects the city. I would always have to have a question with that, because as attorneys, we have an ethical obligation as officers of the court to ensure that what we present to the court is not frivolous. And so to suggest that the law department just fights that, as that article does, and does that without evaluating what is before us is something that I would have to disagree with vociferously. We find, and we regularly have discussions with the police department and our agencies. We have discussions about the risk of certain behavior and how it should be approached with reference to how it would affect the city. We do, and we provide the guidance that is supposed to be provided. When we see cases that have to be resolved, we also understand that lives of citizens are involved here too. So that is a part of the evaluation that we make as we do that. So,
yeah.
And in an overwhelming majority of the cases that we do, we realize that the defense of the police department is defensible. And so we have, since we have the obligation to defend those things, we do. And the cases that need to be settled, we evaluate them and we settle them.
I appreciate your perspective, and I certainly have great admiration for police officers who put their lives on the line every day defending the people of New York City, keeping our neighborhood safe. But when there is police misconduct, there needs to be accountability. And I do hope that your team, and the Special Fed unit in particular, will continue to take a hard and critical look at cases, and when there has been misconduct, that we don't go to the mat defending it, but instead work to support and meet the needs of New Yorkers who've been victimized.
That is clearly our intent, Council Member, to ensure that we as we go to protect the city, that we do it in an ethical manner, and we will continue to do that.
I appreciate that. If I can sneak in two other quick questions. Judge, are you advising, should I be calling Corp Counsel? I don't know what the right, can I go with Judge? Is that okay?
Yes, you can go with Judge.
Thank you very much. That's how I've always known you. I don't know if I can change if I tried. So Judge Heinz Radix, are you advising the mayor on the timeline to close Rikers Island? Is it your understanding that all jails on Rikers Island must close by August 31st, 2027?
I am acutely aware of what the law says, and I will not discuss the advice that I'm giving to apply. I wouldn't tell the mayor what I would tell him to the city council, and so I will just punt that one and tell you that
I like you too much to give you a hard time, but I wish we could get more of an answer out of you. Lastly, on a super parochial matter, we are trying our best to get Bushwick Inlet Park cleaned up. Devin Goodrich from the law department has been working with us and Exxon and Chevron and others for the city to take responsibility for its portion of the cleanup. We hope that the law department will be less litigious and more cooperative so we can finally get our park built on the Williamsburg waterfront, and look forward to your collaboration in that effort.
I will collaborate with you and protect the interests of the city.
Said like a true lawyer. Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Thank you, Councilman Ressler, and I believe Councilman Brewer has a few questions too.
Thank you. I was late because I had to run to an event, but I was listening to your excellent presentation on my cell phone, so thank you. And I also want to thank you for the work you're doing on the smoke shops and the cannabis and the nuisance, and we're all trying. So far, it hasn't been wildly successful, but everybody's trying, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. I thought Councilmember Rensler was going to ask me about that because he's very interested in my affirmative litigation unit.
Maybe the second round. But I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'm also focused on the issue of trying to figure out about some of these police cases. So how many lawyers and staff members are there in your risk management unit? And does it have sophisticated enough software to ingest claims data for the city agencies and the confidential agency records about employees that the law department obtains in the course of its work? I don't know how many people are there, and do you have the right software?
We have a risk management unit in our tort division.
Yes.
Which has several members, but we also look at the work of risk as part of what many of the department engages in the work that they do with our client agencies. And so, yes, our risk unit, which is small but mighty, does it all the time, but all of us share part of that workload.
Okay, and how about the software?
If council member would share which particular types of software that we should.
Oh, I mean, do you think it's satisfactory? Do you know, or maybe that you could get back to us if
Well,
the
we
staff
certainly
member-
have, separate from our risk management unit, we have a team of researchers that do deep dives into certain issues. We have on retainer access to various databases.
Okay.
And so but we're always looking to learn more. So if there is something that you think is state of the art, we would welcome the input.
All right, thank you.
And just before you came, one of the things we discussed was the expansion of our risk unit. That is something that we're currently working on.
Right, I heard that on my cell phone, thank you. And does that unit run reports to identify trends? I think this is what you're talking about. And problematic employees, and obviously you want to make it more robust, but you need more staff to do that. But is that the kind of thing that they do? I assume trends and problematic employees would be something that you could do that with data analytics,
Right.
not to mention software.
Right, and we do that and tell agencies about the things that we've seen that are problematic as we go through litigation, what we've discovered, and if this is how you did it, we got in trouble for it, you don't do it again. We have those kind of discussions all the time.
Okay. I think the law department has stepped up its defense of civil rights claims against law enforcement. I'm sure you know what we're talking about. Treating more and more as no pay in an effort to bring down settlement costs. And I'm just wondering, I think you have a good leading person, and I'm wondering if the approach that is being taken by, I think, Pat Miller, is that the one that the police misconduct litigation is following? Is it something that because everybody's trying to figure out, and I happen to be very supportive of the police department, but you have bad apples like you got bad elected officials. And the question is not to have them cost the city of New York a fortune. So I'm just wondering how you're dealing with the no pay effort.
Well, and that has not been that has not been our approach. Just a no pay effort. And I think the statistical data would bear that out. What we do is we, as litigators, we look and we take cases on a case-by-case basis. We try to evaluate them to see where there are to benefit to us to litigate. And if there's a benefit for us to litigate, we will litigate that case. There may be a distinct possibility for us, or a reason for us not to settle because of the evaluation of the case. And that is an attorney's job. And that's the kind of work I expect them to do for the city. And our attorneys are well aware of the fact that we expect them to go into court and act ethically. The evaluation, and I was telling Councilman Resler before, a lot of things that we see in the newspaper is they top evaluation of what they think is supposed to happen. But we have the city's interest to protect, and we try to do that every day.
Okay. One other quick question, which is that, so the civil rights cases, are they handled in this particular unit, or, because I know you talked about the huge number of tort cases that you're trying to address, or are they distributed throughout? In other words, how do you handle those cases? I assume that's one of your biggest caseloads.
Yeah.
So how do you handle those?
The federal civil rights cases are handled by special federal litigation. There are state civil rights cases which are handled by our tort division.
The police and correction are handled as you just described?
Police and correction in federal court are handled by special federal litigation. In state court, they're handled by the tort division, with some of them handled by general litigation.
Okay, so it's spread out more than one might think. I think that's a concern. So it is spread out, those cases.
A little bit.
You think it should be spread out a little bit more, maybe?
Not necessarily, because expertise in the subject area is required.
Okay. And then when I was borough president, I know that there's lots of times when you can't represent the city council, as you suggested. I'm the borough president for a whole series of reasons, conflict of whatever. So is that something that's pretty prevalent? Because you obviously have to hire outside counsel at that point. Has that happened, maybe not in your tenure in the last year or so, but it definitely happened in the past? So I just was wondering if that's something that you've come up against.
I haven't had it in my tenure.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're set when you're set.
Oh, perfect. Now, I would like to welcome Executive Director of BOE, Micah Ryan, to testify before this committee. Thank you for testifying before today's hearing. The BOE fiscal 2024 prelim budget totals $136.7 million, including $61.1 million in personnel services, funding to support the 517 budgeted full-time positions. The BOE is responsible for conducting all federal, state, and local elections in New York City. Today, we look forward to discussing BOE employees' operation, including staffing and how it forecasts its budget, among other important topics. With that, I'd like to ask the committee counsel to administer the oath and swear in the testifying representatives.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Chair Ung and members of the Governmental Operations and Finance Committees, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to offer testimony on behalf of the Board of Elections. I am Michael Ryan. I'm the Executive Director. Seated to my left is the Deputy Executive Director, Vincent Ignizio, and immediately to my right is General Counsel Hemily Patel, Deputy General Counsel Rafael Savino, as well as the Finance Director, Gerald Sullivan. As we have come to do in the past, we have pre-submitted written testimony to the committee, and we are happy to, especially at this late hour, to dispense with the reading of the testimony and proceed directly to the entertainment portion of the proceedings, which are the council questions.
Thank you, and really apologies for the late start. I do have a couple of questions.
Certainly.
The first question about the state funding in fiscal 2023. I noticed there was a $8.6 million state funding for fiscal 2023, and none for the non-city funding reflected in fiscal 2024. So what is the source of the state funding in fiscal 2023?
The source of that funding was a tier grant. We also had a $1.5 million in a postage grant. And we expect to get similar grants for this coming fiscal year. However, April 1st is the targeted adoption date for the state budget, and we'll have a better idea of what grant packages will be available to the municipalities. What usually happens is the state either establishes independently a grant package or combines it with federal funding, and then there is a calculation that they do based on county size. And New York City usually gets about 42% of the overall grant package.
Thank you. And you do expect to, after April 1st, to receive similar funding?
Well, I would say hopeful.
Okay.
Not quite expect, but we're hopeful. They typically do some type of grant package, and they target different things in different fiscal years.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I'm moving quickly on to the post-sign interpreters and translators. How many post-sign interpreters or translators are typically required for early voting?
For early voting or for election day, it really depends. That question moves from time to time and from election to election. In primary elections, we may have a full citywide election. We may have an election that only several of the poll sites are open in each borough. It looks like this particular primary election is shaping up to be small. We don't see too many challenges amongst the parties, but that will be completely vetted during the filing process and the post-filing hearing process. So we don't really know, but I can tell you that we service 5 languages: English, Spanish, Korean, Chinese, and Bengali. And then we follow Section 203 of the federal guidelines, and we assign interpreters accordingly.
What is the total budget in fiscal 2023 and 24 for the post-sign interpreters and translators?
So we don't kind of figure it out that way. It's all a subdivision of the, a subset, I should say, of the poll worker budget. So poll worker budget is $250 a poll worker, $350 a coordinator, and it's all kind of worked within that. We don't have the ability to say pay interpreters on an hourly basis. They are ultimately considered to be a poll worker. The difference between an interpreter and a regular poll worker, though, is an interpreter needs to pass a test and does not necessarily have to be a registered Republican or a registered Democrat, where a normal or regular poll worker, I should say, would have to be a member of either of the 2 major parties.
Thank you. And right now, there's enough interpreters available. Is there any issues with that?
Yes, we haven't had real issues in terms of the interpreters lately. In the past, we had difficulties with particularly obtaining Korean interpreters.
Okay.
And we have, and this started really before COVID. Obviously, COVID changed the dynamic a little bit, or a lot. But we started targeting especially the Asian-specific languages in a different way. We found out that we weren't using I don't want to say the proper way, I don't know exactly the way to say it. We weren't using the most effective way to communicate with the Asian language-speaking community, and we have other ways of different digital platforms. Now, for me to say that I am fully versed in the specific Asian language digital platforms, I'm not, but I can tell you that the efforts that we've made with our language unit has brought more Korean interpreters into our contact list, and we've had far less problems recruiting Korean interpreters in the most recent years.
No, that's good to hear. There is, issues regarding that Asian languages. Really feel free to contact my office, since I do have the highest Asian population in all of New York City Council districts.
We certainly will, because we're always looking to stay on top of our outreach efforts. And our theory is we have to spend the outreach money anyway in order to do our job, so we should be spending it in the most effective way possible. We might think we're doing something that's working very well, and then we get the feedback from more specific members of the community and find out that our efforts aren't as effective as we'd like them to be.
Thank you. Now to early voting. What is the current number of planned early voting sites for this upcoming June election?
It's 140 if we have a full citywide election, which we're not anticipating for June. We'll have something less than a full citywide election in June, but 140. And if you look in our testimony, there is specific reference to where we started in 2019 versus where we are now. In 2019, we had 61 early voting locations, and now we're up to 146, I apologize.
We just added 6 just now.
We just, in the last 5 minutes, because you asked the question, we added another 6 early voting locations. In any event, our target, we're at 146 now. Our target is to get to 200, and we're trying to continue to push forward to get to move from, say, 1,200 Election Day sites to 1,500 Election Day sites. That's where we'd like to get. We think that would put us in a better position. However, I always have to underscore, we own no poll sites. Mm-hmm. We have no absolute access to the sites. Yes, we can legally designate sites, but that is limited. So we're always reaching out, not only to the City Council, but other governmental entities to try to assist us to make a broader base of government-owned facilities available to the Board of Elections for Election Day. The less private sites we have to open, the less money we will spend, and the more control we'll have over the facility. So that is more of a plea than an answer to the question, but it remains the same nonetheless.
Understood. So that leads to the next question. So what factors are considered when you consider a location for early voting or changing the early voting site?
So when we're using purely private sites, some of them that we cannot legally mandate will change from election to election because the site is either no longer available or the landlord does not wish to allow us to use it, and then we have to move. But in any event, the specific factors that we have to consider for an early voting or for early voting locations are laid out in the New York State election law, and it involves population density, it involves accessibility to public transportation, and ADA compliance and all of those things. But we follow the New York State election law, and they were pretty specific when they drafted that, and they've made some tweaks to it since early voting began in 2019 as well as what they have done is lowered the population density, which means that we would have more early voting locations with a lower population density.
Do you just see the turnout for all the early voting location sites? Would that ever change, like how you determine where that voting or that early voting site should be there, or should it be moved? Should it, yeah.
Well, so we have to follow the state law first and foremost. Then, if a site is not getting turnout, that might be related to the site itself, or it might simply be related to the voting vagaries of the individual district. It's a difficult item to assess with specificity, but suffice to say, when we started early voting, we started with 61 sites. We came, Council Member Brewer was there at the time, and we were chided quite loudly from different corners of the city that we weren't doing enough. And we said, and certainly Councilmember Brewer was not one of them who loudly chided us, maybe privately and quietly chided us. But we said at the time that our plan is to get this program off the ground on short notice and build. And we have built. We got to 106. We thought we were doing a great job, and then the state law changed, and now we're up to 146. But our still goal remains to be at 200, and then take it from there. But we're finding the more sites that we're adding, the more difficult it is to find appropriate locations. And that's why we're saying, again, to you folks, we need space. And we will assess and survey any location that is given to us as a potential site and see if it fits not only our needs but meets with state legal mandates.
Thank you. And just one last question about early voting. In all the other counties in New York State, they have early voting centers where voters from any assembly district within the county can vote early. We do not have that in New York City. So can you explain why we do not?
Well, I would say first, other counties are not analogous to New York City. In many of the counties that have voting centers, they only have voting centers. Some of these counties use their office for early voting. So it's not analogous to New York City to say that they have voting centers or not. They're making everybody go to one spot. That's not necessarily, helpful to the voters. But I want to make something very, very clear, and it's getting to a point of critical mass. The ballot marking devices that we use to conduct elections, while they may have been good in 2007 when we started to use them, they are past their useful life cycle for the improvements that we want to be able to make to the elections process. And the biggest hurdle that we have with the ballot marking devices, which is an impediment to further analysis to having voting centers, is that the memory that these devices have, which are hardwired memory cards, is insufficient for the audio files for the various languages that we have to serve. The audio files take up a lot of space on the ballot marking devices. And for each ballot style that we have, and we have over 4,000 ballot styles in the city of New York, if you were going to have, say, in Brooklyn, which is the fourth largest city in the world if it's a standalone city, if there's 4,000 ballot styles citywide, there might be 1,600 ballot styles, 1,800 ballot styles in Brooklyn. We don't have a device that will be able to accommodate the audio files for all of those ballot styles. And that is not only is it a big impediment to early voting, I'd like to take this opportunity to say, because it's such a big impediment to early voting, that's just a kind of an emblematic fact. It's also, considering that we are now in 2023, And the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990 and enacted in 1991, and we're now in 2023, that we are still in New York State having our members of our accessibility community voting in such a starkly different manner than the way that voters vote, that all the other voters vote. I think that is beyond a violation of the spirit of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we owe our accessibility community voters more than we're giving them. And we, as the City Board of Elections, don't have the independent authority to move that issue forward. That's done on a state level.
Okay. So speaking of these new machines that's needed, has there been research? How much are these machines? How much we would need to upgrade these machines?
So we can't get to that point first because there are no, presently, although we hear that there are things in the hopper on the state certification side, there's nothing for us to consider until the State Board of Elections completes its certification process for new devices. And until that process is completed, we keep hearing dates. I don't want to testify for the State Board of Elections. We're hoping that we'll have new things to consider soon. And if we do, we'll then come back to you guys and say, hey, we need more money because we got these new devices.
No, thank you. I think, yes. I think as long as you're hearing things are moving in that direction, you think. Okay. And please keep us up to date about that. And
well, you guys will be the first to know if we need more money for new machines.
I think my question about the early voting sites is not to decrease them, but to have a machine that if you live anywhere in the district, you can actually go to that site and not to go to your Pacific site, which I think hopefully could drive up some early voting numbers. So with that, I believe Councilwoman Brewer has a few questions.
Thank you. To follow up on the chair, so because we do want to be able to vote early at different locations, and what you're saying, I think, is one of the reasons we can't is because the BMDs are not available at all the different sites. Why? What is the impediment?
No, it's not that BMD's not available. The BMDs that we presently use do not have sufficient memory to accommodate the needs of larger, consider it this way. If you're taking an early voting location, right, and you wanted to say, we're going to take 10 assembly districts and press the 10 assembly districts into an early voting location, you're going to need to have the ballot styles for all of those assembly districts and election districts.
Okay.
When you have to have a ballot style in the BMD, it has to have an accompanying audio file so that the audio file matches specifically with that ballot style. And these machines are on the very, very end. We're already at the end of life and storage, memory storage.
But I think they're at the end of their life even without the storage.
Correct.
That's my understanding.
100%.
From all my friends who try to use them.
I mean, aside from the fact that they're made of good, sturdy steel, the rest of it, it's time to go.
So let me pretend that the other counties, Herkimer, blah, 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 they don't have that problem because they're too small? Is that what you're saying?
Well, they don't have the language requirements that we have in New York City, which adds to the issue. So if you have only, say, English and Spanish, if that's your requirement, then you only have to have 2 audio files.
Okay.
We have locations that have upwards of 5 audio files for the same ballot.
So I'm still trying to get back. So the issue of voting in different locations, you're working downtown, you live uptown, but you want to vote, you can vote downtown. The challenge is mostly the BMDs, or is there some other challenge to this being able to vote anywhere on
So the challenge is mostly the BMDs.
Okay.
And without a new device, we can't even get to the next step of doing an analysis.
I got it. Okay.
And then coming to you, as an elected official, not necessarily in the context of a hearing like this, but for us to be able to come to you and say, hey, we got a new machine, Councilmember Brewer, what do you think? How would you envision the right way to do it for your district? And we can have those conversations at a later date if we have the right equipment.
Okay. And I assume that even though the state may come up with something, they're not the geniuses on this topic either.
They don't run elections, and I think that's the challenge for the State Board of Elections as well. They're trying to do a job overseeing 62 counties
No, I know, but
with
I'm
all
saying-
different needs, and they don't run elections.
Yes. So my question to you is, I assume you do this, but do you work with the gazillion software people in the city of New York to figure out how to do what you're trying to do, or do we wait for the state to come up with something?
The structure is that the State Board of Elections has to certify devices for elections, and we can't do anything unless that certification endorsement has
All right,
occurred.
so and if we don't like what they certify, we just live with it? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I mean, I just don't know that they know more than somebody we know in the city of New York who is good at this, but I'll leave that for now. I like Mr. Kellner, but I don't think he knows anything about Board of Elections, BMDs. My other question is, how do you plan for your budget? Because I assume when you talk about real estate, you also have to pay some of these private, I know we have to negotiate some of
Right.
these private enterprises, and they hold you up for money in a way that is not appropriate because they're supposed to be, in my opinion, you should be participating as a citizen of the city of New York and letting people vote in your premises, but I know that's not how they look at it.
Right. Prior to the passage of early voting, we asked, I'll say it that way, we asked the state legislature to establish standards for payment for the early voting locations. The legislation passed and the standards were not included. So where we're at with that is we still have the legal authority to designate poll sites, and within that designation includes early voting. But in those areas where we don't have sufficient locations that we have the legal designation to, we cannot legally designate them.
You know, like a school.
We're
or-
then, yeah, like that, or other government buildings, or
Government- yeah,
other
that's what I mean, government
not-for-profits.
Right.
We essentially, and this is not a good position to be in, but in those locations, we essentially have to go hat in hand to these, to locations in the area and say, we need a spot.
Right.
And then we end up
Paying them.
paying for that, to the point now where early voting and the 106 early voting locations that we used last election and Election Day are mirror image in terms of cost. So we're paying as much for early voting with 106 sites as we're paying for Election Day with 1,200 plus sites.
Because you have to deal with some of the private sites.
Correct.
And I think, as you know, what we've always maintained that if you get a, J51, 421A, as long as it exists, et cetera, that you should be able to use that site because they're getting their tax break. I guess that has never really been accomplished.
Correct, but the biggest portion of, the finances all come from you guys. And I certainly think that I would be happy if there was interest to work on help you guys with a resolution to the state to say this is affecting our ability to plan for our budget, and we would like you to address this in the legislative process. We certainly could provide you with information if there was an appetite for it.
Okay. I think there is, because money is tight, and we are concerned about our budget, so that's certainly. The other thing was just, it mentions here that there were more complaints about poll workers than in the past. And I know you do a lot of training, I'm aware
Right.
of that, but do you have some reason why it has, I guess it went from 480 to 256 in 21, and then 510 in 22? And I just didn't know if there was some reason for that. It's hard to recruit, I know.
Right, so some of it was COVID-related. There were those issues. And then the other thing is when turnout goes up, complaints go up. And when you have more, shall we say, voters that don't typically vote, or new registrants, and or they're voting for the first time, or they haven't voted in a while, and they're not as familiar with the process, sometimes that becomes the poll worker's fault. So it's a mix of things, but we certainly work on the training aspect of it as best we can. And when we get complaints about issues in real time, we have much more of an ability to react and correct when we get the complaints post-election and with, weeks down the road, it becomes very hard to put Humpty Dumpty back together and figure out who exactly did what.
Okay, and then just finally, locally, got a Riverside Community Center, we walked it, we figured out that we could put a very long ramp, and we want it.
Okay.
I don't want to be told, no, it's too much, or blah, 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 because that's where the seniors vote, and they wouldn't have to travel so far, and you could add it to your, whatever number you're trying to get for your target.
Well, so when we first
We
started...
spent
well,
hours walking
right.
to get it.
When I first started here, this was before the 2014 Second Circuit decision. The board's reaction to inaccessible sites was to move the site. I think you're now aware that that's no longer our reaction. And we now have 7, we started out with 2, we now have 17 ramp installation vendors, and we use the same components with all of the vendors. And they have to, if they're going to be one of our vendors, they have to be willing to use these components. So I can tell you this, if the interior of the site surveys well, the exterior of the site will not be an impediment. One more ramp to the mix. We had 600 and something ramps last election. Say it was 667. 668 is not going to be a budget breaker.
Thank you very much.
And we'll take care of it. So if you get me that information and you have my contact,
I certainly
we'll
do.
get our surveyors out there.
Thank you.
And the ramp will not be an issue. I can't speak for the site otherwise.
Thank you very much. Cynthia Doty is also terrific. I just want
Yes.
to add that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember, really quick on that. One thing that we are trying to encourage both the council and the state legislature to look at is the ability to ensure ramps or accessibility permanently, meaning a JOCS contract which allows for the concrete. That way the entire site can use it year-round, not just during elections. We don't have to spend the money to rent ramps, and it ends up being a benefit to the community because that ramp is there and that facility is accessible throughout the entire year, not just during election.
I agree, and I will be very quick. I have spent hours. The issue is your definition of ADA is different than the earlier definition of ADA in a senior center.
Right.
So the friggin' wheelchairs can get in there, but whatever definition you have, they don't, even though they go in every single day.
Right.
So we tried.
Let's put our heads together.
No, we tried. We tried moving the wall. We tried. You cannot imagine,
Right.
and it's not possible. So in this particular case, there may be others.
I get it.
I was willing to pay for it. Buy the concrete, move the wall. I was willing to do anything. It just can't be moved. Blah blah blah. So we're going to be stuck, if possible, with the ramp as long as the interior works.
Gotcha.
Right.
Thank you.
And I can tell you that one of the ways, I know it's not popular for some folks' purposes, but one of the ways that we were able to put the consent order on the ADA accessibility to rest and have that finally close, and the court signed off on the fact a couple of years ago that we're no longer under it, was because we strictly adhered to the legal mandates. We didn't write the legal mandates, but we have to comply with them, because if we don't, what's going to happen is an accessibility rights group will bring another lawsuit and we'll be back under another consent decree, which is not really helpful to anyone. We want to work with the accessibility community, and we also want to appropriately accommodate the neighborhoods.
Thank you. And I believe Councilman Shulman has a few questions.
Certainly.
Yes, hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So I just want to make sure I have this correct. I'm listening about the early voting sites because, so there's two things. One is the machine, just in general. One is the machines and one is getting an appropriate site.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And then you'll come back. I'm in District 29, so the early voting site for me, which is Forest Hills, Rego Park, Kew Gardens, Richmond Hill, is not.
New District 29 or old District 29?
The new District 20, well, the van is not, so let's not talk about that. The van is not ready for the new districts. That said, the new district is Forest Hills, Kew Gardens, Richmond Hill and a small piece of Rego Park. But at any rate, there are a lot of, the district has a significant number of older adults, and so it's hard for them. The early voting site is at Queensborough Hall, which is a little bit
Right.
difficult to get to. I just want to, when all of this happens, and I'm more than happy to work with you on seeing what we could do with the state, and certainly talk to my state legislators about that. So, and we can just, offline, we can talk about what the details that I would need to go to them with. But yeah, I just want that taken into consideration, because it is difficult, and I think more people would vote if it was closer to them.
So I would say this as well. When the boroughs establish the early voting locations, they look at the map of the borough, and then they have to break that map up into chunks, right? So they're going to assign certain districts to Borough Hall. If there is another facility somewhere else that's better, they might be able to remove a district or two and put it in another location as well. That's another potential option. So if you're aware of some place that you want us to take a look at, we certainly can do that as well.
Okay, well, I'll circle back. I'll circle back
Okay.
with you on
Thank
that. But at any rate, so actually, now that you brought this up, the van, do you have the staff needed to make the changes to the list for the new districts? The voter list?
Yes, we actually did that already. We
So-
did it in December.
Okay, well, this,
And it had to be distributed in order for people, it had to be distributed before petitions hit the street. Otherwise, people would not be able to be engaged in petitioning, which is already
I
underway.
am telling you, as somebody who's running for reelection, the van list, we were told the states that it's not updated.
The state?
Yep, it's not updated.
We're not, respectfully, we're
No,
not
I know you're the city, but I just-
If you need a voter list for your districts, we have them. We completed the maps in December, and the voter lists are completed, and we're at our front count as required by law before petitions hit the street.
Fine, well, we can talk about that, but the state has advised us that they're not ready yet. They don't have. So people are paying for these lists and not getting the new districts, but I'm glad that you have them. The poll workers, is there any consideration given to increasing their, what they get paid?
Their compensation?
Yeah.
So, yes, that would be something that could be completed in the state budget. There are two ways for poll workers to get a raise. One is the New York State Legislature sets a new rate of pay, or two, in New York City, by executive order of the mayor. And the last raise was given by Mayor de Blasio. We were asking for $300 for poll workers and $400 for coordinators, and we got $250 for poll workers and $350 for coordinators. Half a loaf was better than none,
Right.
But still, that is something that's within the sole purview of the mayor or in the collective purview of the state legislature and the governor.
With the requirement now that you can register to vote up to 10 days prior to the election as opposed to 25 days, do you have enough staff to process those applications?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And to add on to that, we will be ready for the online voter registration deadline in May.
No, that's great. Those are all the questions that I have to ask you for the moment, but thank you very much. This has been very educational, actually, information.
Thank you.
And thank you, Executive Director Ryan. I look forward to those machines.
We do too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Have a wonderful day, folks. All right. Now this is going to be the trick. Getting up here. These chairs are so low. Good job. You got a golden tongue, man. What? Done it once or twice before. Right?
Good afternoon, and I'm saving the best for last. I'd like to now welcome Asim Raham, the Commissioner and the Chief Administrative Law Judge, to testify before this committee. Thank you for testifying before today's hearing. The Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings Fiscal 2024 prelim budget totals $62.9 million, including $45.3 million in personnel services funding to support the 368 full-time positions and the $17.7 million for other than personnel services. Oath is the city's central independent administrative law court conducting hearings for the city agencies, commissions, and boards. Today, we look forward to discussing many aspects of Oath's operation, including the management of summons received from city agencies, its citywide savings program, and a review of the fiscal 2023 prelim mayor's management report, among other important topics. With that, I'd like to ask the committee counsel to administer the oath and swear in the testifying representatives.
Good afternoon. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and respond honestly to council member questions? You may proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Asim Rahman, and I am the Commissioner and Chief Administrative Law Judge at the New York City Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, also known as OATH. I'd like to start by thanking Chair Ung and the members of the Committee on Governmental Operations for the opportunity to testify today. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Brian Connell, Assistant Commissioner for Financial Services and Data Analytics. OATH is New York City's central independent administrative law tribunal, and our mission is to ensure that everyone who appears before us receives a fair opportunity to be heard and a timely resolution of their case. We are a high-volume court. In 2022 alone, we processed almost 500,000 summonses, held over 235,000 hearings, issued close to 2,000 appeals decisions, and conducted approximately 650 trials. In each of these cases, we take great care to ensure that every party who appears before us is treated impartially and is accorded due process. In today's testimony, I'll first describe the successful efforts of OATH over the past year, and then we'll address the budget projection for the coming year. In the past calendar year, the challenges caused by the pandemic did not diminish OATH's ability to ensure due process and fair and impartial hearings. Rather, since the earliest days of the pandemic here in New York City, OATH's been able to adapt its practices so that we could seamlessly deliver our services to New Yorkers, city agencies, and all other parties who appear before us. Most notably, when the pandemic started, not only was OATH able to quickly pivot from in-person to remote hearings, but we have since refined our practices so that the remote option has become the mode of choice for most respondents who have cases at OATH. To put this in concrete terms, it's with great pride that I can report that we have managed to conduct more than 586,000 remote hearings in our hearings division since the pandemic began. We've also held thousands of remote trials and conferences in our trials division. And thanks to remote hearings, OATH continues to afford New Yorkers with access to just outcomes on city-issued summonses, while also providing convenience and a healthy and safe way for New Yorkers to appear. The vast majority of New Yorkers who challenge city-issued summonses at OATH continue to opt for the convenience that a telephone hearing provides. Adding to this convenience is an available callback function that eliminates their waiting time on the phone. Whatever challenges await the city, the amazing staff at our agency have dedicated themselves to meeting these challenges and making sure that New Yorkers receive impartial hearings and timely decisions. Our staff at OATH are very much New York's fairest. Let me start with our trials division. The OATH Trials Division adjudicates a wide range of cases filed by city agencies, boards, and commissions. Trials are conducted by administrative law judges, ALJs, who are appointed to 5-year terms. The division's caseload includes employee discipline and disability hearings for civil servants, as well as cases involving city-issued license suspensions and revocations, city vendor contract disputes, the conflicts of interest law, the city human rights law, consumer and worker protection law, the loft law, retention of police-seized vehicles prior to forfeiture proceedings, and seizure of vehicles from drivers accused of speeding in school zones or running red lights. In the past 2 years, additional staff have joined OATH Trials Division to help the division adjudicate or facilitate settlement of an increased caseload of employee disciplinary matters brought by the city's Department of Correction. Over the past year, the Oath Trials Division continued to conduct proceedings primarily by video. This has enabled parties to participate safely and effectively, view video and other evidence simultaneously, receive interpretation in the language of preference, and communicate clearly with the ALJs. In fact, through the dedication of our skilled staff, the tribunal has produced significantly more output in the first half of fiscal year 2023 than in the same period in the prior fiscal year, with a higher percentage of decisions upheld. Specifically, from July 1, 2022 through January 2023, Oath ALJs resolved 1,539 cases, including 1,262 cases via settlement conference, which represents an increase of 58% as to settlements compared to the same period last year. Oath ALJs also held 342 trials, 37% more than in the same period in the prior year. And lastly, 99% of our ALJ's reports and recommendations have been upheld by city agency heads in their final determinations. We also have our hearings division at Oath. The hearings division is comprised of adjudications, the clerk's office, and appeals. Adjudications conduct hearings on summonses issued by more than 20 different city enforcement agencies for alleged violations of a law or city rules. Enforcement agencies that issue these summonses include DOB, Department of Sanitation, DEP, the Fire Department, Parks, DCWP, DOHMH, and TLC. In terms of numbers, I'm proud to report that we have now adjudicated over 240,000 summonses in the last 12 months. Adjudications continues to conduct most of its hearings telephonically. Telephonic hearings are safe, easy, and very convenient. With a telephonic hearing, residents and small businesses, their representatives, and city agency attorneys and inspectors do not have to travel to an Oath hearing center and appear in person. They could simply schedule their remote hearings by email. A callback option is also available for residents and small businesses to use once they check in for their hearing by phone, which is an added convenience. It eliminates the need to wait on hold and allows New Yorkers to get on with their day until their hearing is called. That said, we know that some individuals do want to physically come to Oath's office for a hearing. Accordingly, Oath continues to make in-person hearings available to respondents upon request, and residents and businesses also have the opportunity to submit their defense by mail or through what we call one-click submissions. We also have our clerk's office in adjudication, in hearings. And the clerk's office staff handle all of the administrative steps associated with hearings, from scheduling to responding to inquiries, to mailing out decisions, to processing refunds and accepting payments on penalties imposed. In 2022, the clerk's office processed close to 500,000 summonses that were filed with Oath. And lastly, appeals. The third part of our hearings division receives and adjudicates matters that are filed with Oath when a party appeals the decision of a hearing officer. In 2022, appeals issued close to 2,000 decisions. Next is our Special Education Hearings Division. The Special Education Hearings Division was established by Mayoral Executive Order 91 of 2021 and a Memorandum of Agreement executed by Oath, the City Department of Education, DOE, and the State Education Department, all to address the growing number of filings relating to claims for services for students with special needs and to address the extensive delays in the adjudication of such claims. Federal law provides that students with disabilities are entitled to a free and appropriate education. Accordingly, DOE is required to provide each special needs students with appropriate services so that the student may benefit from the educational program. A parent who believes that DOE is not providing the appropriate services for their child may file a due process complaint. The due process complaint is then assigned to an impartial hearing officer, IHO, who must adjudicate the matter in a fair and timely manner. Our Oath IHOs are appointed to 4-year terms to ensure greater judicial independence, and the IHOs are also bound by ethical rules to afford each party appearing before them due process and impartiality. In the past year, we have accomplished the mammoth task of standing up this new division. Moreover, for the cases that have been assigned to Oath, we are meeting our intended purpose of reducing the time it takes to adjudicate claims filed by parents. Oath also has the Center for Creative Conflict Resolution. Since 2016, Oath's Center for Creative Conflict Resolution has served as the city government's central resource for restorative justice and conflict resolution services in support of city government agencies, businesses, and the general public. The center offers a number of workplace conflict resolution services for city agencies, including mediations, conflict coaching, group facilitation, restorative practices, dispute system design services, education, and training. A primary goal for the center since its inception has been to work with city agencies to design and implement alternative dispute resolution services and restorative practices in their public-facing work. During the past year, the center has handled close to 400 consultations, coaching sessions, trainings, workplace and community mediations, and group facilitations. Now, Oath's mission requires that we prioritize the public's access to justice, and there's several ways that we achieve this. I'll tell you about 6. First, Oath ensures that it is accessible by providing in plain language and translating information into the top 10 languages spoken in New York City. Everyone has access to free translation services for help sessions, trials, hearings, community service, and mediations. Oath also makes all of its forms and applications available in the top 10 languages and other documents as well, such as outreach flyers, informational fact sheets, and handouts. And later this year, when a respondent has a matter that's heard by the Oath Hearings Division or Trials Division, Oath is going to make it possible for that respondent to request a copy of the decision be sent to them in their preferred language. Second, not having a lawyer should not limit one's ability to navigate Oath's processes. So Oath has a help center, which ensures that unrepresented respondents receive non-legal answers to their questions, are made aware of their rights, and understand the hearing process. A resident is afforded the opportunity to have a help session, which is a one-on-one meeting with one of our Oath procedural justice coordinators and in their language of preference. The city's help center response time to requests for help sessions is less than 1 calendar day on average. And in 2022, Oath's Help Center staff conducted over 50,000 help sessions and assisted almost 40,000 individuals who came to the windows at our various Oath offices. In addition, the Oath's Help Center has added specialized units that focus on assistance to small businesses, veterans, and older adults. And since 2021, the Help Center began conducting help session in Oath's Trials Division for unrepresented for-hire vehicle drivers facing license suspension or revocation, and for vehicle owners seeking to recover their vehicles after NYPD seizure pursuant to an arrest. More than a dozen explanatory fact sheets on enforcement agency processes and on Oath's hearings processes are available at our Help Center, and they may be translated into the top 10 languages. These documents include fact sheets such as DOB certificates of correction, DOB stipulations, DCA settlements, helpful information for haircutters, hair salons, and barbershops, and summonses where your property was taken away. So if you or your staff or your constituents would like to learn more about our Help Center, please reach out to us and we'd be very happy to provide it. The information is also on Oath's website. Third, with respect to access to justice, Oath leverages technology to make our adjudications more accessible to parties. A text message reminder system is available to all Oath respondents to help ensure that people never miss a hearing and get real-time updates about the status of their case. Since the inception of the text message reminder system in September 2020, approximately 13,000 respondents have registered for these reminders. The text message system can also be utilized to initiate contact with our Help Center. In addition, during the pandemic, Oath added the callback option, which I previously referenced. Since this option was launched, around 80% of respondents have taken advantage of it. We also have created a QR code, which you'll find on outreach materials, email signatures, and other correspondence, which takes users to a specific page on Oath's website called "You Received a Summons, Now What?" This webpage enumerates all of the options available for someone who has just received a summons, including links to web pages and online forms such as a reschedule form, payment websites, hearing request forms, and other pertinent information. We are also in the process of relaunching our website with a new sitemap, which will make it easier for users to find information. Fourth, Oath has redesigned a majority of summonses, the aspect of the summons that Oath is in control of, that agencies use with clearer plain language instructions, fewer words, and the QR code. Fifth, appreciating that access to justice also requires transparency, Oath continues to facilitate requests from the media for records, information, and access to hearings. Additionally, our Trials Division decisions are made available online, our Hearings Division appeal decisions are accessible online, and we make the outcome and status of current hearings available to see online. Our average FOIL response time is approximately 8 days. Sixth, With respect to access to justice, Oath recognizes that even with the technological advances and conveniences I outlined, there are New Yorkers who want to engage with the city in person. And so Oath meets people where they are. We have offices in every borough where people can come in person and ask questions and take care of Oath business. Each year, thousands of respondents come to our borough offices to get work done. These are just some of the measures that Oath has put in place to ensure that its operations are fair and transparent and that everyone has access to justice. We also focus on public education. We understand that the city government can sometimes be difficult to navigate. Oath has various vehicles for keeping respondents and practitioners updated on new developments. This includes the agency's social media presence and our monthly Bench Notes newsletter. Moreover, Oath remains committed to leaving our offices, getting out into the neighborhoods and educating New Yorkers about what we do. During the past year, Oath Communications and Public Affairs and Legislative Affairs Division continue to provide public education services about how New Yorkers and New York City businesses can resolve their civil violations. In the last year, Oath has conducted approximately 83 public-facing educational events in collaboration with elected officials, business associations, community groups, and more. These educational events included trainings about Oath for council members' district office staff who handle constituent services, and we recognize that some of your constituents will have a summons-related issue at one time or another, so we're happy to give your staff information about how Oath works. Also, we've introduced Oath at Office, a new initiative involving Oath staff working on location in a council member's district office and meeting with and assisting constituents on matters related to their summonses in the hearing process. We're proud of our work partnering with the council through the years to provide assistance to the residents of New York City. We look forward to working more with the council to continue to find new ways to help New Yorkers get work done. Finally, with respect to the budget, Oath's fiscal year 2023 adopted budget was $68.2 million, and the fiscal year 2023 current modified budget is $65.1 million. Oath's total preliminary budget for fiscal year 2024 will be $62.9 million. Of the $62.9 million, $45.2 million is in personnel services and $17.7 million is in other than personnel services. Agency headcount will be 368 for fiscal year 2024 preliminary budget. This does not include the roughly 343 per session hearing officers in the Oath Hearings Division. $137.2 million is expected to be collected by the city in civil penalties for fiscal year 2024 from payment of fines prior to a summons being docketed or falling into collection status. In closing, Oath remains dedicated to providing access to fair and impartial justice for all New Yorkers. Our outreach work with this City Council has helped us meet that goal this past year. I look forward to our continued efforts, and I welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony and thank you for the great work. I know my office has a great partnership with your team, so thank you. Just a few quick questions. The budget does provide for 368 full-time positions. Is that sufficient for all the work that Oath has to do?
So our main goal is, as I mentioned, to provide individuals and respondents and businesses who appear before us with a fair and impartial hearing and a timely resolution of their case. We've had vacancy reductions, and with that, we've still been able to deliver on that core service. Our staff may be a bit stretched thin. Every agency that has had to go through vacancy reductions has had to manage those, but currently we're able to get the work done that we need to get done. There are areas of our work where when we feel that additional staff may be needed, we engage in discussion with the OMB on that topic.
Thank you. And a question about the Independent Administrative Tribunal to hold hearings related to New York City students who require special education services. Why does the PMMR does not include indicators for the special education services, and will there be indicators next year?
So the Special Education Hearings Division started taking cases 1 year ago this month, March of 2022. So the data wasn't there to put it into the PMMR now. It is one of our new divisions. It's an adjudications division. It's a very busy division. So our intent is to have MMR data is to have the SEHD's work reflected in MMRs going forward. I don't quite know if we're going to do it for this current coming MMR, because it wasn't in the PMMR, but for the future, surely that should go in, and we will be working on what are the appropriate metrics to put into that report.
Great. And just a few questions about the summons. Is there a broad breakdown between the summons that OATH receives by issuing agencies? Like basically what agencies, issue the most summons, and what are the, type of summons that's most common?
Sure, I'd be happy to share that. The information, if we think about the fiscal year to date, so July through January of 2023, and we look at it by agency, far and away, the agency that has the highest volume of summonses that are filed with OATH is the Department of Sanitation. And just to give you an illustration by numbers, so far through January of 2023, in this fiscal year, we've received over 190,000 summonses by the Department of Sanitation. The next in line, which I believe is DEP, is in the neighborhood of 36,000. It's possible that there may be health related numbers that are slightly higher than that, but I just wanted to use the DEP to illustrate the gulf between number 1 and number 2. Once you get to number 2 and the remaining agencies, the numbers are a little more consistent.
And in that 190,000 by the Department of Sanitation, what's the most typical of those summonses?
Yes. For the Department of Sanitation, the most typical summonses are dirty sidewalk, they are failure to clean 18 inches into the street, so you have your sidewalk, and then you have to go a little bit beyond the curb, and then storage receptacles. Summonses regarding storage receptacles.
Thank you. And one last question. What about the geographic distribution of these summons? Maybe it's by borough.
I don't have that information, and I'm not sure sitting here today if our systems allow that to run that. Obviously, summonses have zip codes on them and other information, but I would need to check with my team to know if we can actually run a report that shows summons distributions by type and by zip code, but I don't know sitting here today.
That would be great. Thank you. And what is the percentage of summons that people just do not pay?
Sure. So, we refer to that as default. These are individuals who would come to a hearing or not show up for a hearing, and therefore it goes into a default status. And right now, if you look at the entire work that the hearings division handles, default rate is about 40%.
Okay. And what type of summons are the most common for these defaults?
Sure. If we look at our agencies, the agency, not by volume, but by percentage, the agency that has the highest, of their summonses that have the highest default rates is DOH-MH. So in looking, I'm just looking at January 2023. So for example, to illustrate, in January 2023, DOH, we received about 4,571 summonses from DOH-MH. 50% of those resulted in a default status. And then there are other agencies that also have a 50% rate, BIC and DCWP, but the numbers of summonses are much smaller, so 50% is of a smaller number. Yeah.
And what is the consequences for defaulting on a summons? What's the next steps after that?
Right. So we want to make sure, this comes back to making sure that everyone has a fair opportunity for a hearing. We recognize that sometimes people intentionally default, but there are other times when people unintentionally default. They may miss something. So if an individual defaults, they can file a motion to vacate that default. And it's a very simple process that within the first 75 days, it used to be a shorter period and then it was extended, an individual can file a request to have the default vacated, and it's not something where they need to get into lengthy arguments. It's a very simple process to have that reopened. Then they can pursue the case if they want to. If they choose not to, if the default stands, then they are going to be in a status where there'll be some sort of kind of collection standing against them by the City of New York, as the city would want to collect on the penalty.
Thank you. It's a long day. So thank you. Thank you for answering all these questions. I'm good with all my questions. Okay, thank
All right.
you.
Thank you very much.
again, and again, really, really apologies for the late start.
Not at all. We're happy to be here and happy to continue to work with the council and answer any questions you may have. Have a great day.
All right, seeing nobody signed up in person, we have two panelists or two public testimony. We'll start with Lacey Tauber and then Ben Weinberg. So Lacey, if you can unmute yourself, we can get started. You can start, thank you.
Starting time.
Hi, my name is Lacey Tauber. I'm the Legislative Director for Brooklyn Borough President Reynoso. I'm here today, as I was last year, actually, to talk about community boards, even though they were, once again, unfortunately not on today's budget agenda. I submitted longer testimony in writing, but just wanted to review quickly some of the things that BP would like to see in the budget to support our boards, which serve as the most grassroots level of city government. The biggest thing is staffing. Right now, their existing budgets provide no more than 3 to 4 staff lines, leaving them little room for competitive salaries and struggling sometimes with, technical assistance. They need technical assistance for land use that goes beyond what is provided. We would love to see professional urban planners work directly with the boards. Right now, the boards have to pay for that. Again, their budgets are limited. There's a few other things that the district managers are asking for support, identifying new spaces, human resources, communications and technology, IT support, that's a key one. OTI currently has one staff member dedicated to all 59 boards, and the way that they prioritizes their requests often leaves boards at a disadvantage. It takes a very long time for them to get assistance. Equity and accessibility at meetings, most critically translation services, but also food and childcare, real engagement from city agencies on the budget process. I think there's a big debate about whose responsibility some of this work is, but the truth is our office is simply not funded to provide the full scope of the support and technical assistance that the boards need to do their charter mandated functions. So we would love to see, at least one staff person in every agency solely dedicated to working with the boards. And in the long term, the BP supports the Future of Community Boards working groups call for a central staff, where community board staff and members
Time
can access
expired.
a central resource for assistance with all of the things that I talked about. Thank you so much for your time.
Next up is Ben Weinberg.
Starting time.
Hello, good afternoon, council members. My name is Ben Weinberg, and I'm the Director of Public Policy at Citizens Union. Citizens Union is a nonpartisan good government group dedicated to making democracy work for all New Yorkers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today about the New York City Board of Elections. The NYC BOE is fully funded by the NYC government, but is not accountable to the city's elected officials or to the state or to the public in the same way that other agencies are, but to the leaders of political parties. And the NYC BOE has ignored legislation that this body has passed in the past. And while many election employees are hardworking public servants, particularly the thousands of poll workers who give their time every year, they also face partisan-based hiring and promotion mechanism that impacts performance. The past year was an extremely busy election and redistricting year, and the BOE has managed to pass it with relatively success compared to the public blunders of previous years, but past experience tells us that the structural limitations of the BOE system end up manifesting in a public blunder. Although structural change can only be done at the state level, the City Council does have the opportunity or opportunities to exert influence over the New York City BOE's operations and to push for reform. Most importantly, the council is the only elected body with some power to impact the selection of commissioners to the New York City BOE. It can and should take measures to guarantee qualified commissioners are appointed, from holding public hearings with adequate notice to refusing to appoint party recommended candidates should they not demonstrate the necessary experience or commitment for reform. Now, the previous council appointed 9 new commissioners and approved 7 reappointments. This council has so far had the opportunity to appoint 1 new commissioner with 1 more coming soon. And each of these instances is an opportunity to require nominees to publicly commit reforms, from implementing council bills to publicly posting all job listings and hiring based on
Time
merit.
expired.
Just finishing. In addition, council member can express their support for legislation to improve election administration, which is moving through the legislature. The state Senate has passed a package of bills that would improve hiring, training, resources, ethical standards, and performance at local BOE, including a proposal to restructure and reform the New York City BOE, which would give the council a say in appointment to the board's executive director, allow the city to set the type of reports it receives from the board, and provide the OMB with stronger oversight over the board's expenses. The council can approve a resolution calling on the legislature to pass these bills and on the governor to sign them. That's it. Thank you for your time. I hope you consider that as you debate the BOE's budget.
Is Juan Calcutta or Alex Stein on the Zoom? If they are, please raise their hands. Not seeing anyone else, I will turn it back over to the chair to close the hearing.